I am Shoaib Gorbani, the founder and director of Project Control Academy. We help you build your expertise in project controls. Today, I had the opportunity to interview some of the exhibitors with the tools that they provide in project controls. And today, I have the honor of talking to Mr. Paul Self, the co-founder of Basis Planning. So, Paul, thank you very much for accepting this interview and talking about Basis.
Happy to do it.
Awesome, great. So, Paul, tell us about what challenges project control professionals are currently facing in the industry.
So what we're seeing, and these are really the driving factors as to why we created Basis, is we see a brain drain within an industry, right? We've got a workforce that's exiting, we've got a younger generation of planners coming in, and there's the need to retain that knowledge and pass that on to the future generation of planners and allow them to leverage it as they're building plans, rather than having to continually go back out and pull in our previous planners and pull them back into the organization as consultants and continue to work with us in that way.
So you basically work with the data and...
We do. So what we do is we take your historical information. So think about it as a Primavera XER, your as-built schedules. You can have standards that you would have stored within a knowledge library, and then Basis proactively provides that guidance back to the planner as they're building the plan. And it's aware of the context of your project. So if I'm working on a project in North America that's a commercial construction project, it's a high-rise. So it knows that you're working on that type of project, and it uses that context to make better and better suggestions the more you use the application.
Awesome, great. So what made you, I know you're a co-founder of Basis, but what made you to come up with this great tool?
So that's a really
what was a challenge that this tool would provide the solution for?
So part of it was, there were a couple of things. So one was knowledge retention, capture and reuse, with people exiting the workforce. But a big piece of it was the flip side of Basis is capturing human intelligence as part of the planning process.
Okay.
So we do a lot of risk workshops and interactive planning sessions and that kind of stuff as well. And inevitably what we find when we sit down in those workshops is it's the first time, like the engineering team or the contracting superintendents, the folks that are responsible for executing the work, it's the first time they're seeing the plan. So in Basis, what we do is we allow you to use artificial intelligence to build the plan, but then you take that plan and you pass it back out to that community of individuals that really know how to execute the work. And they can provide their feedback. They tell you if they believe in the durations, if you've identified the right risk events, and then you flatten all of that information into a consensus-based plan. So you have the best of both worlds. You have knowledge, history, standards, driving your planning process, but you still capture the expertise of those that know how to execute the work.
Very cool. So talking about this, and I know one of the questions that our audience was asking, we asked, had a poll or survey from our audience in project controls regarding the project control tools, and most of them were having the question from the tool provider in terms of integration, because they were all looking for a tool that integrates everything together, like cost, schedule, information management, change management. Tell us how your tool Basis would provide that integration, or is it just for planning purposes?
So it is for planning purposes. So we're focused on the pre-planning and planning phase of a project. We're trying to make sure that as you're planning your project that you get the plan right the first time. So we store cost information, we do store durations associated with activities, standard subnets, fragnets, that's all stored in the knowledge library, along with risk events and issues and action items, other things that you would have used as you've executed prior projects. So we take all of that and we do integrate that information into the process of building that first-time plan.
And how is the position of Basis in terms of change management? Like, how do you process the change management in the system?
So for us, we're focused on kind of pre-planning and the planning phase of a project, but as organizations begin the execution phase for projects, they iteratively bring, and on a periodic basis, bring that plan back into Basis, and they compare it to itself. How was my plan compared to what it looked like 3 months ago? Or how does my plan that's 6 months into execution compare to a project that was similar, analogous scope, that was 6 months into execution as well? So that's we don't focus on the change management aspect, but we do assist in continuing to iteratively improve the plan with the knowledge that's available.
Very nice. Okay, awesome. So you were talking about the artificial intelligence,
Sure.
and that was one of the very good questions that one of the audience was asking regarding the artificial intelligence and the big data. What is the roadmap that BASIS see for the future in terms of integrating the artificial intelligence and kind of big data into your product?
Okay, so it's interesting. The challenge with big data is when you start to capture information, it's not about storing the data, it's about knowing what questions to ask of the data, right? And what's unique about what we do is BASIS is what's known as an expert system. So it has a knowledge library that sits behind the scenes, and then there's an inference engine that has a set of criteria that it uses to make suggestions to the planner as they plan. From a big data perspective, what we're getting better and better at, the more data we capture, the more clients we work with, is understanding those relationships. And from a big data perspective, that's how we're attacking it, is as the database grows and continues to get larger, we can make more informed connections within the data itself and use that as someone that's building a plan so that it can be even faster, easier, and of a higher quality.
Okay, very nice. And regarding the challenges, if a company wants to implement BASIS tomorrow, what would be the number one challenge that they would face in terms of adapting to this tool?
Okay, that's a great question. So, the number one challenge that pops up in every conversation we have when we're beginning the implementation of BASIS is how do I get my data into the knowledge library, right? I've got all of my historical projects, I've got these risk registers, I've got historical cost information, so that's the challenge that most organizations have to overcome. We've made it very easy for organizations. You can import your XERs, you can import your Microsoft project schedules, and even easier, we actually created a concept called knowledge tags, so that as I'm bringing that data into the knowledge library, I can give it context. We talked earlier about, I can say this project is a project that took place in North America, it was a commercial construction project, or it was an offshore platform. So I give it that context, which makes populating the knowledge library so much easier. And in reality, all these organizations are they already have a data initiative in place. They're trying to figure out how to use their history. But even when they're storing the information somewhere, there's not a proactive means of pushing that back out to the community that needs it. So that's the number one challenge probably that we have to overcome in the implementations of BASIS, but it's a very feasible and easily overcome challenge.
Okay, awesome. And how do you see the future of project controls? Where do you think we are kind of trending in the industry in the future?
That's another good question. So I think project controls has made some really good advancements over the course of the last 20, 25 years. We've gone from kind of reactive approaches with things like earned value management, where something has to occur in order for me to react to it, to more proactive approaches with schedule diagnostics, things that you would do with Acumen Fuse or tools like SteelRay, to predictive, using risk modeling to try and predict a range of future outcomes for a project. I think now we're at a point where the industry can take a preventative stance. So rather than trying to be predictive, rather than just being proactive, I think we can address issues before they occur if we can take advantage of the history and the data that we have at our disposal and do it in an effective way. So that's where I think it's heading to a more preventative stance.
Okay, very good. And the last question I have for you, Paul, one of the major challenges that many companies are facing are selecting the right tool, because there are many tools out there. So in your opinion, what would be the number one factor that a company should look for in terms of selecting a right tool for their company?
So it all depends on requirements, right? But I think more than anything, if you're looking at a new piece of technology, do they have a pragmatic and a real-world approach to solving the challenge that the organization actually has? I think there's a lot of new technology sitting out there that could be useful, but doesn't have a defined use case for how an organization could benefit from its implementation. So I think it's making sure you understand your requirements. And then when you're evaluating the tool set, having a very pragmatic approach on what can this tool actually do for us.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time, Paul. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Problem.
Thank you.